When I think back to my earliest years of being online and connecting to the internet, I almost always think about my GeoCities website I started in late 1996. Back then I didn't have internet access at home. Instead, I would sneak into a local college campus and slip into their computer lab to get online. I had a friend whose dad worked at that college, so as long as I was with this friend, I figured I had a free pass to the ever so intriguing information superhighway. My buddy and I both had Macintosh computers at home, with no internet access, as well as a love for freeware and shareware. So we'd grab some discs and head up to the college to download some Macintosh goodies regularly. He was more into math and TI calculator software, and I was into games. I'd also read up on the latest Nintendo news, and fill up my floppy disks with shareware and freeware games. It ruled, and it was so much fun to dig around the net to see what I could find. After a few months though, I had a falling out with this friend. He was kind of a dick. One of those types of people that would be cool with you when it was just you and them, but if anyone else was around, they'd be completely different, and even mean to you. Hate people like that. I did end up going to the lab by myself, and eventually with other friends, which led to some interesting adventures. But that's a story for another day. Anyways, during my time going to the computer lab with this guy, we both had GeoCities websites that we'd work on. His was pretty decent, but mine, wow. Mine looked like shit. But that's okay because it was my own little home online. Back then we still had an ancient computer at home, and I could only work on my website at the computer lab. It lived on this floppy disk, and I did what I could whenever I got the chance to work on it. So for the most authentic experience, we're going to use Netscape Navigator 3.0 on an ancient Mac. I've recently downloaded and fixed up the site and made it available for you to check out on Killgruz.com. I'll put a link to my site in the description. Welcome to Gruz's homepage. Well, here it is in all its embarrassing glory. The Gruz's homepage. The Gruz. Through many typos, that became gruz. I was only 13 or 14 years old when I made this, and I'm 33 now, so don't judge me too much. So this The Gruz logo is new. I whipped that up real quick as an attempt to fill in some of the missing images. I only had to remake a few images, but the new ones I added probably look way better than what I originally had.
Please note, I will be starting my Blink 182 page very, very soon.
I planned on making a Blink 182 page there for a while. When I added this text, Blink 182 had just released Dude Ranch, and I loved that album as a kid. Little did I know how much I'd hate every other album they'd go on to release. So this next part's a bit hard to read. Red text with that red gruz background I made in Photoshop back then. I'll read this to you. It goes,
Hey, my name is Jared Ford, but people just call me Jerry.
Actually, only people on IRC would call me Jerry. No one in real life called me that.
And I went to school at Edison Middle School, and I am now going to start school at Lincoln High School in late August of '98.
God, I hated high school. Those were some of my worst years ever. Man, I love being an adult.
I work at a local grocery store called Sunshine Food Market. So if you are ever in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, then stop by and say hi. And I will say, who are you and what do you want? In fear. Hehe.
I was a jokester even back then. I actually got fired from that job for dyeing my hair purple and green. Some old grannies complained and the boss told me to go home and not to come back until I dyed it back. I said screw that and never went back.
I also spend a great deal of my time on the IRC, so if you are ever on EFNet, then message me. I am usually on channel Teens Chat, and my nickname is The Gruz. I hope to hear from you.
Now to think of it, there were an awful lot of grown men in that IRC channel. Ugh. IRC was my teenage hangout. I was always on there every freaking day until I was in my early 20s. I went through a time when I didn't have many real-life friends, so my internet buddies were some of my best. Definitely past those no friends years now. I got them all over the place.
Hey Corey, hey Johnny, hey Mark, hey Sally. If you have anything to say to me, email, or any other video game codes, or if you're just lonely, email me at thegruz@geocities.com.
Me email love video game codes. Me email lonely. Man, I love that email address, thegruz@geocities.com. I lost it when Yahoo bought GeoCities. They merged the GeoCities mail with the Yahoo mail, and I guess if you had a GeoCities email that was the same as a Yahoo name, they just dumped it. Bastards. So scrolling a little further down is where we find the real content of my site. N64 Game Codes, N64 Pictures, the classic game Genie codes, some links, and my unfinished Star Fox 64 homepage. Let's go back up and check out my N64 game codes. So I tried to include codes from games that I actually had for my Nintendo 64. I was lucky enough to get one right as they were released, and ended up getting most of the best games throughout the console's life. Good times. Here I had codes for Super Mario 64. This is one of my all-time favorite Mario games. I had some tricks, secrets, and glitches. Kind of fun to read through these nowadays and remember them. Star Fox 64, which had some tips and tricks. I loved this game back then. I haven't played it since. I wonder if it held up. Mario Kart 64, again one of my favorites for Nintendo 64. This had some high scores, tricks, shortcuts, and stuff. Turok. This game was fun. I don't think I ever beat it without codes. My page had a ton of codes to access different cheats and modes. Remember the disco mode? I had War Gods codes. I didn't play this one much. I knew a kid at school that borrowed it to me for a couple of weeks. Wave Race 64 codes. I didn't love this game, but it was pretty good for its time. I remember how awesome that water looked back then. And finally, I had some Shadows of the Empire codes. Man, I loved this game back then. I played so much of it. I beat it at least a few times. I recently went back to this and man, it didn't age well. Next, onto my N64 picture library. This was supposed to be the section where I would post screenshots of upcoming games. I'd just rip them from other websites. I don't think I ever got around to doing much with this though, with only 4 pictures of the upcoming Earthbound 64. That game was never released though. This page looks the groovest in Netscape Navigator. Now onto my Game Genie section, which I only included some of the Super Mario 1 codes I had back then. There's quite a few of these and it's worth a look. I think I had reposted these a while ago on my current website, in the page for my top 10 Super Mario Game Genie codes. A lot of fun codes here. Now onto the final section, my massive links section. Here I had some links to some of my friends' sites, as well as Nintendo and Macintosh game companies and shareware websites. The Mac section is freaking massive. I've always been pretty interested in this stuff, and I would frequent these Mac developer sites as often as I could. I've left the archive.org links to these sites in their place, so most of them you should be able to click on still, and check out what those sites were like back then. Remember N64HQ.com? Or Nintendojo.com? On the bottom of my main page, I had a guest book, though it isn't functional anymore. I did repair the counter though. I remember how impressed I was when I first got that counter working. Look at the very bottom of this page. Just to let you know, I am probably the only cool Macintosh user. That's kind of sad to think about how I honestly felt that at one point. Everyone I talked to that used Macs were all pretentious and not very nice to me. It was weird. I actually was afraid of becoming like that, so in the early 2000s I switched over to PCs almost exclusively. I did end up going back to Macintoshes though, and nowadays I use both. So that's about all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my old website, or homepage. I've gotten so many requests for the URL in the past years, since I featured it in that video that got over 500,000 views. Like I said, I was just a kid when I made this site, and it certainly isn't something that I'd create today. I'm embarrassed about it, but not ashamed. I'm still into Nintendo stuff, Game Genie stuff, Macintosh stuff, pretty much all the stuff this website was about. Rediscovering it for me was a look back into my early teenage years, and it was really nostalgic. While I don't miss those times, I do consider them important. Sure, it's just a stupid website, but it was experience in presenting something to an audience, which I've since really developed a love of doing. I might not be here making videos today if it weren't for stupid things like this, and for that, I gotta hand it to myself. Good on you, little gruz.